Hello, and thanks for joining me at IT Homelab Online. In this video, I'm going to install Ubuntu Linux on a Windows Multiboot USB NVMe drive I created from a previous video. This adds another level of flexibility to your portable lab arsenal. Firstly, we'll free up some space at the end of the disk, and using our Ventoy USB stick, we'll install Ubuntu Desktop. We'll also leave some additional free space to install Ubuntu Server at a later stage. Now, let's get started. First, you'll need to download Ubuntu installer, which you can do from the link below. Now, I always like to download the LTS version. It just means that you've got a bit more support if you do want to use it as a production guide, but feel free to go down and download the very latest version. So click download, and it should start. Now I have already downloaded this and saved it to my Ventoy USB stick, because obviously it's going to take a little bit of time depending on your bandwidth. So I'll cancel that download for now, as I've already downloaded it. Okay, next we need to free up some space at the end of the NVMe drive. So to do that, right click on your Windows icon in your taskbar and go to Disk Management. Now make sure you do this on the correct disk, obviously. For me, I'm using my 256 gig demo disk, so I'll right click on here, go to Shrink Volume, and type in the amount of space that I want to free up. Now I want to create two separate partitions on this in the end. Firstly, I'm going to create a 48 gig Ubuntu desktop partition, and then later on I'm going to create a 32 gig Ubuntu server partition. So all up I want 80 gig of free space. I'll type in 80 gig here and click Shrink. Okay, now once I've done that, I can reboot from my Ventoy USB stick that I created earlier. So let's go and do that now. Okay, so once we've restarted, go into our boot menu, go down and select our Ventoy USB disk and hit enter. This brings up our Ventoy menu, which has the two images that I've copied onto the USB stick. So I'm going to select the Ubuntu desktop for this exercise and boot in normal mode. Now you can wait for the timer to time out. I'm just going to hit enter. This will just take a little minute while it prepares the operating system and installer. Okay, so first thing we need to do is select our language. And next, select our keyboard type. I'm using the standard English US keyboard. Okay, now you've got a couple of options here. You can connect to the internet, which will allow you to pull down all of the updates and things, or you can just continue without it. Okay, so I'm going to install Ubuntu. I'll do an interactive installation so I can choose my options. And I'm going to use default selections just to make it simpler. Don't have any additional hardware requirements. Okay, so it's detected that there's a few operating systems already installed. I've got my Windows on my internal drive, and I've also got Multiboot Windows installed on my external drive. So here I'm going to say alongside and click next. Okay, now this is your, I guess, your primary account. So I'm just going to use a generic name of Ubuntu. That's the name and model. I'm actually going to change that just because this is my demo lab. So I'm going to call it demo lab, and I'm going to set a password. And say that the password is required to log in. Next. I'm going to select now my time region. So I'm in Melbourne, Australia. So just click down here and say next. Okay, so this is selected the SDA. Okay, I'm going to go back and do a manual installation. Okay, so here we're going to choose manual installation, click next. Now, we're going to choose the 256 or 240 gig as it's labeled here, and we're going to use some of this free space, and we're going to set the same disk as the boot device. So we're going to choose the SDA, not the internal 512 gig. Okay, going to use free space, so we're going to create a new partition there. Now, I want to use a 48 gig partition here and leave some free space for an additional partition to be installed later on. So my 48 gig partition will be 49152. It's going to be type ext4, and it's going to be the root. So click OK, and that's all we should need to add in there. So I will now say next. I'm going to enter in a username of Ubuntu, change the computer name to Demo Lab, username is Ubuntu, and set a password. Next. I've chosen Melbourne, that's the region that I'm in, and install. You just need to be really careful selecting your boot partitions. This will install the grub boot manager, which will install alongside your Windows boot manager. And then grub will automatically detect that you have Windows installations as well. So it will add those to your to the grub boot manager. So I'll show that once we've finished the installation and done a restart. So now that the installation's finished, click on Restart Now. And it will ask you to remove your boot media, which I'll do. And hit enter. Now I'm going to go back into my boot menu. And I'm going to select my external USB NVMe drive and hit enter. And you'll see now this has brought up a Linux boot menu. So from here, it has auto-detected Ubuntu, obviously. It's auto-detected my internal NVMe drive and my Windows boot manager for the external drive. So first I'm going to go into Ubuntu, and we're just going to make a slight change to the boot menu, which will allow us to remember what our previous selection was from the grub menu. So it means that if you're using Ubuntu occasionally, it will only set that as the default once you've chosen it manually once, I guess is the best way to describe it. So hit enter to log in, type in my password. Now it comes up with this initialization screen the first time that you go into it. So we're just going to click on next. We're going to skip Ubuntu Pro, and I'm not going to send any information because this is a bootable device that will get transferred to different hardware platforms. Okay, click finish. Now, the first thing I want to do is open up a terminal. And I want to run some updates. So the command to check for new available updates is apt update. Need to do that as a super user. So I've used the command sudo apt update, and then I'm going to say sudo apt upgrade, and I'm going to default to yes. Enter in my password. Now that will go through and detect all available updates. And first of all, I need to connect to my Wi-Fi. So select IT Homelab, enter in the password for my Wi-Fi. And now I can rerun my command. Now while that's happening in the background, I can open up another terminal window. Okay. So in this window, I'm going to do a sudo nano, which is my preferred editor, /etc/default/grub. Into my password. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is, you can see here the default boot option is option 0, which is the first option in the menu, Ubuntu. I'm going to change that to saved. And then there'll be another option called save default, which I'll need to create. Okay. So grub underscore equals true. Now, by creating those two entries, what that will do is remember the previous option that I've selected and then use that the next time. So it's just a bit easier for navigating through that grub menu. The other thing I like to do is reduce the timeout. So here we can see it has a timeout of 0. I'm going to set that to 5 seconds. Okay. Now we'll just wait for this to finish updating. I'll pause the recording for now and resume once it has completed. Just while we're waiting for those updates to complete, I'll go back and edit that again. So once I've edited this file, it was just a Control X to save it, and then that gives me the option to overwrite the existing file. The other thing we'll need to do now that we've updated that file is we need to update the grub menu. So we do a sudo update -grub. Okay, so that will now apply the changes that we made. So now that that's finished applying all the updates, there's a couple of other applications that I like to install. So I'm going to do a sudo apt install. One of them is called tmux, which basically allows you to execute commands directly onto the server if you're trying to connect remotely. The other one is OpenSSH server, which allows you to connect remotely. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is just pin the terminal to the dashboard, make it easier to find later. And now I'm going to do a restart to demonstrate the change that we made to the grub config file. So we'll do a restart here. Now with my BIOS, I don't need to necessarily go in and change or choose the boot menu every single time. It does remember the EFI entries from the previous boot. So I'm going to go down to here and choose the Windows option now, which will boot from my external drive, and then we'll do a quick restart and you'll see that the grub menu has remembered this as the default. Okay, so I'm just going to do another restart. Okay, so now you can see from that boot menu that it's defaulted to the previous chosen option, and it had a 5-second timer, which is obviously timed out. So, thank you for watching, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe and see the links below.